In the glittering skyline of Dubai, where opulence meets ambition, one love story captivated the elite and then horrified an entire region. A wedding that cost $500,000. A guest list boasting royalty, celebrities, and CEOs. A bride in a $100,000 custom gown. And yet, within 24 hours, that fairy tale turned into a nightmare. Layla Al-Hassan was 26 years old, beautiful, educated, and seemingly on top of the world. She had just married one of the richest eligible bachelors in the UAE, Ahmad Al-Farouk, a tech mogul and heir to a vast real estate fortune. The two had been introduced through family connections, and their engagement had been the talk of Dubai society for months. But behind the smiles and designer jewelry, neither Layla nor Ahmad were who they claimed to be. The grand ceremony took place at one of Dubai's most luxurious hotels, an ultra-private 7-star skyscraper known for housing visiting royalty and billionaires. Over 500 hand-picked guests dined on gold-dusted canapes, sipped vintage champagne, and posed under towering floral arches. Social media was flooded with posts from influencers and insiders, all marveling at the extravagance. Everything seemed perfect, but the night hid a chilling secret. Unknown to anyone, Ahmad had been investigating Layla for 2 years. Before he even officially met her, he had stumbled across her online, through mutual connections in London, where Layla studied international law. Something about her captivated him, but it wasn't love. It was something darker. Obsession. Ahmad's curiosity turned to suspicion. Rumors swirled around Layla's social circle in London, about parties, ex-boyfriends, even a scandalous lawsuit involving one of her former roommates. Nothing was proven, but Ahmad wasn't interested in facts. He was hunting for something that would make her unworthy of his name. So he hired a team of private investigators. Over 18 months, they trailed her movements across cities. London, Paris, Istanbul. They hacked into her email. They paid off acquaintances. Every photo, every message, every social interaction was documented in a file the size of a phone book. Layla had no idea, or so Ahmad thought. What Ahmad didn't know was that Layla had begun to suspect something months before their wedding. An unknown number kept texting her vague threats. She'd find photos of herself from days prior slipped under her door. Anonymous emails with subject lines like, "You're not who you pretend to be." At first, she thought it was just a jealous ex. Then she realized she was being watched closely. She contacted a cybersecurity expert who traced some of the digital intrusions back to a server rented under a shell company owned by Ahmed's business group. That's when everything clicked. The charming man she was set to marry, the one who had swept her off her feet with lavish dates, surprise vacations, and endless compliments, was also the one stalking her. But Layla wasn't just a victim. She was preparing her own case. She installed hidden recorders in her apartment. She logged every unusual interaction, every mysterious email. She even set up a private cloud account to store evidence. She knew that if she confronted Ahmad too early, she could lose everything, or worse, be silenced. So she waited. She smiled through the engagement photos. She let him believe she was oblivious. She played her role until their wedding night. The presidential suite of the hotel was larger than most apartments, with floor-to-ceiling views of the Persian Gulf and a private butler on standby. Ahmad asked the staff to leave. Security cameras were turned off for privacy. It was just the two of them. And then he showed his cards. He presented Layla with a thick file, photos, transcripts, receipts, screenshots, all laid out across the bed like evidence in courtroom. His voice was calm, calculated. He told her it was over, that he was going to expose her to the world, that his family had already seen everything, that the Al-Farouks would never be mocked by a woman like her. But Layla didn't cry. She didn't beg. Instead, she calmly reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. It contained her own collection, audio files of Ahmed's threats, recordings of his conversations with investigators, evidence of cyberstalking, and even a recorded call where he bragged to a friend about catching her slipping. She had been building her case, silently, carefully, waiting for the moment he would incriminate himself. What happened next remains the subject of ongoing debate and legal battles. All that is confirmed is this. Sometime between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m., hotel staff heard a scream. Security arrived 5 minutes later. Inside the suite, Ahmad lay motionless, bleeding from a head wound. Layla, in her torn wedding dress, was crouched in a corner, crying, holding her phone. She told the police it was self-defense, that Ahmad attacked her when she refused to delete the files, that he'd thrown a glass at her, pinned her down, tried to choke her. In the struggle, she had grabbed a lamp and struck him. Once, maybe twice. Paramedics confirmed Ahmad died at the scene. Layla was arrested, but the scandal didn't end there. The grand doors of the presidential suite at the Royal Palm Hotel shut behind Layla with a soft but final thud. The silence that followed was heavy. Outside, the music in the wedding ballroom still throbbed faintly through the thick walls. 500 guests, still sipping champagne, laughing, unaware that upstairs a storm was about to unleash. Layla turned to face Ahmad, her eyes calm but guarded. Her gown shimmered in the golden light of the suite, but her posture was stiff. Ahmad stood across the room, removing his cufflinks slowly, methodically. There was a chill in his demeanor, not the warmth one expects from a groom on his wedding night. He broke the silence first. "You really thought I didn't know?" Layla's brow furrowed, but she didn't speak. Ahmad walked to the minibar, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and took a slow sip before continuing. London, 2016. Kensington, the apartment on Harrington Road. Roommates, parties, photos, videos. Do you want me to keep going? Layla's eyes widened, not in shock, but in recognition. Her voice was steady. "You were the one sending those messages. The fake accounts, the letters, the car that followed me." He smiled, cold and bitter. "I watched everything. For years, I knew what kind of woman you really were." A deep silence returned, only broken by the faint clink of ice in Ahmed's glass. Layla slowly moved to the edge of the bed, lifted her veil, and spoke with quiet fury. "You married me just to punish me?" "No," he replied. "I married you to expose you." Ahmad walked to the desk and opened a black leather folder. Inside were photos, grainy images, some clearly taken with telephoto lenses, others hacked from old social media accounts. There were screenshots of messages, tag locations, even records of her college days. It was a stalker's portfolio. Obsessive. Chilling. "This is what I'll send to your family. To the press. To every person at tonight's wedding," he said, sliding the folder across the table. Layla didn't even glance at the photos. Instead, she reached into her clutch and pulled out a slim recorder. She pressed play. Ahmed's voice filled the room. "I'll ruin you. I don't care if we're married. You're a stain I need to clean." He lunged toward her to snatch the device, but she stepped back. "I knew something was wrong from the beginning," Layla said, her voice trembling now with a blend of anger and heartbreak. "The anonymous emails, the strange feeling of being watched, and then your proposal. So sudden, too perfect." Her voice hardened. "So I played along." Ahmad stood frozen, the glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the marble floor. Layla stepped closer. "I hired my own investigator. I traced the accounts. I planted false stories in my messages to see what you'd react to. And every time you did, I recorded it." She handed him a USB drive. "That's everything," she said. "Your blackmail, your threats, your obsession. You're not exposing me. I'm exposing you." Ahmed's face darkened. "You think anyone will believe you? I'm Ahmad Al-Maktoum. My family has power you can't even comprehend." Layla's calm smile returned. "You're not the only one with power." What followed next was chaos. Ahmad, blinded by rage, charged. There was a struggle, loud, violent, with screams muffled by the suite's thick walls. No one outside heard a thing. Later that night, a hotel maid would find the suite's furniture overturned, shattered glass everywhere, blood smeared on ivory silk, and Layla, still in her wedding gown, lifeless on the floor. The day after the wedding, sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Burj Al Arab's royal suite. The opulence was almost overwhelming. 24-karat gold fixtures, rare marble flooring, and private butler service. But beneath the luxury, tension simmered like a silent storm. Ahmad stood by the balcony, sipping black coffee, his gaze lost in the horizon. Layla emerged from the dressing room, wrapped in a silk robe. Her eyes were sharp, observant, yet unreadable. "Sleep well?" he asked casually, though his tone was more measured than affectionate. Layla gave a tight smile. "I did." "You?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the suite's desk, pulled out a velvet folder, and laid it on the bed. "Layla," he said, voice flat, "before we move forward in this marriage, there's something we need to address." Her fingers twitched slightly, but she said nothing. Ahmad opened the folder. Inside were photographs, email printouts, hotel records, even CCTV captures from as far back as London. Layla's face remained stoic, though a hint of steel sparked in her eyes. "You've been following me," she said slowly, as if confirming aloud made it more real. "I needed to know the truth," Ahmad replied. "The real you, not the version I met at that charity gala." Layla picked up a photo, an old university party, her arm slung casually around a male friend. "And this truth justifies violating my privacy for 2 years." Ahmed's calm cracked for a second. "You don't understand. You think I'm the villain here." She stared him down. "A man who stalks a woman for 2 years is not a misunderstood romantic. He's a predator." His hand curled into a fist. "I gave you everything. A royal wedding. A life people dream of." Layla didn't flinch. "You gave me a prison wrapped in silk." Ahmad turned his back to her. "I had to be sure. There were rumors. Men who claimed things, pictures, stories. And you never once thought to ask me?" Layla's voice rose slightly. "You chose to believe strangers over the woman you claimed to love?" He turned, eyes dark. "Because love was enough. Not when reputation is everything in our world." Layla moved slowly to the side table and picked up a small black device. She clicked a button. A red light blinked. Ahmad froze. "I've been recording this conversation," she said evenly, "and many others. Every anonymous message, every surveillance camera you placed, every private investigator you hired." Ahmed's face went pale. "You knew?" he asked, voice shaking now. "I suspected," she replied, "but I confirmed it 6 months ago. And instead of running, I stayed. I built my own case. Carefully, quietly." He lunged toward her, but she stepped back, raising the device. "One step closer, and this goes straight to the media, to the police, to your business partners." Ahmad stared at her, breathing hard, fury and fear battling inside him. For the first time, he wasn't in control. "You ruined me," he whispered. "No," she replied. "You did that all by yourself." Layla had always seemed perfect, elegant, poised, untouchable. But no one knew the fear she had endured since arriving in Dubai. Anonymous messages tucked under her door, her phone ringing at 3 a.m. with heavy breathing on the other end. A sense of being watched everywhere, gyms, cafes, even her workplace. It had started shortly after she returned from London. At first, she thought it was an ex-boyfriend playing sick games. But it became clear that the person watching her had access to far more: bank transactions, emails, private medical records. When she received a message that included a picture of her little brother's school, she realized she had to act. So she played a role. She accepted Ahmed's advances. She smiled for the cameras. She even pretended to fall in love, all while collecting evidence. Ahmad paced, still trying to assert some kind of control. "You think people will believe you?" he sneered. "I'm Ahmad al-Rashid. My family owns half of the Gulf." Layla raised her chin. "Then imagine how devastating it will be when the world finds out you're a stalker, a manipulator, and a criminal." He looked at her, truly looked, and realized he had lost. "I loved you," he whispered. "No," Layla replied. "You love controlling me. That's not love. That's fear wrapped in obsession." He slumped into a chair, suddenly looking older. "What do you want?" he asked. "Money?" Silence. Layla turned to the window, gazing at the sea. "I want my life back. And I want every woman like me to know we're not powerless." Then she walked to the suite's master bedroom, locking the door behind her. Ahmad sat in stunned silence. He had spent years building a trap, but he had walked straight into hers. The wedding night, the supposed climax of fairy tale romance, was anything but that for Layla. The presidential suite at one of Dubai's most exclusive hotels glittered with opulence. Marble floors, gold-embellished chandeliers, and a panoramic view of the Arabian Gulf. But inside, the atmosphere had curdled into something far colder. Layla stood in front of the floor-length mirror, the weight of her diamond-studded veil pressing on her head like a crown made of lies. Ahmad stepped into the room behind her, silent and watching. He had been quiet all day, eerily calm, yet unreadable. Most grooms would have been glowing, overwhelmed by love or exhaustion after such an extravagant affair. Ahmad, however, carried a different kind of energy. As he sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, he looked not like a man who had just married the woman of his dreams, but like a hunter finally in the same room as his prey. "I have a gift for you," he said flatly. Layla turned, her expression wary. From beneath the bed, Ahmad pulled out a black leather folder and tossed it onto the bedspread. Layla didn't move immediately. Something in her gut told her this wasn't about jewelry or a honeymoon itinerary. "Go ahead," Ahmad said. "You might recognize some of the pages." Reluctantly, Layla opened the folder. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the contents. Photos from years ago in London, chat transcripts, CCTV captures, and even screenshots of her university ID records. Her hands trembled as she reached a printed dossier marked "Confidential. Investigation report. Layla A. You hired people to follow me?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. "For years," Ahmad said, emotionless, "you thought you were being careful. You weren't. I knew everything before I even introduced myself at your family's event. I knew about your past before our first conversation." Tears welled up in Layla's eyes, not out of guilt, but rage. "You tricked my family into believing you loved me all this time." "I do love you," he said, standing now. "But love isn't blind. Love is truth. I needed to know everything." Layla clenched the folder, then flung it across the room. This was never about love. This was control, surveillance, stalking. Ahmed's smile twisted. "You don't understand the kind of world we live in. Men like me don't get fooled by women with secrets. You should have just told me the truth." "I don't owe you anything about my past," she snapped. "You think because you bought a wedding, a hotel, a stage, you own the woman standing on it?" The room grew tense. The silence between them now felt like a ticking bomb. But what Ahmad didn't know was that Layla hadn't been the naive bride he thought he'd trapped. Over the past few months, subtle warnings and strange behavior had tipped her off. Messages that came from untraceable numbers, a strange man always appearing at the university cafe, and rumors back home that Ahmad had a history with troubled women. She had grown suspicious and careful. "I've got something for you, too," she said slowly, walking over to her handbag. She retrieved a small voice recorder, then placed a USB stick on the table between them. "That's the last 6 weeks of our conversations. All the calls, all the private messages. And yes, your threats, too. Every time you mention blackmail. Every time you use my past to manipulate me." Ahmed's smug expression faltered. You recorded me?" "I had to," she said, "because I knew the day would come when you'd try to use your power to destroy me. You weren't just building a file on me, Ahmad. I was building a case against you." His voice dropped to a near whisper, dangerously low. "You don't know what you've done." "No," she said, stepping back. "You don't know what I'm capable of." Ahmad lunged forward, grabbing the USB stick, crushing it in his palm. But Layla didn't flinch. "I made 3 copies," she said coldly. "One went to a lawyer in London, one to my cousin. You want to burn the truth? You'd have to burn down 3 countries." Now the dynamic in the room had shifted. Ahmad, the once confident manipulator, found himself cornered, not physically, but reputationally. And for a man whose entire empire was built on image, that was the deadliest threat of all. "This can't go public," he muttered. Layla didn't respond. Then came the final straw. Ahmad grabbed her wrist and dragged her toward the window. "You're not leaving the suite until you swear you'll destroy the evidence." She twisted her arm out of his grip, Touch me again, and I'll scream loud enough for the entire hotel to hear. You wouldn't dare. You think I'm scared of scandal? She said, voice trembling. You already destroyed my wedding night. I have nothing left to protect but the truth. Just then, the hotel phone rang, startling both of them. Neither moved to answer it. Outside, the city of Dubai sparkled like a mirage. But inside that suite, the glitter had turned to dust. Two people stood not as lovers, but as enemies, locked in a deadly standoff between power, pride, and painful secrets. That night, only one of them would make out of that room alive. The city skyline sparkled behind the penthouse windows of the Burj Al Arab. For the guests who had danced the night away at Layla and Ahmed's extravagant wedding, the story had seemingly ended in a fairy tale. But for the newlyweds, it was only just beginning, and ending all at once. Layla stepped into the presidential suite in her shimmering white gown, a soft trail behind her like the remnants of a dream already fading. Ahmad followed her, calm on the surface, but a storm behind his eyes. He poured them each a glass of champagne. Layla declined, her instincts on edge. So, Ahmad said, voice low, you never told me about London, about Ollie, about that professor, about the club in Notting Hill. He turned to face her, holding a leather folder, thick and heavy. Her blood chilled. He dropped the folder on the table. It popped open, revealing photographs, chat logs, social media archives. Images of her university life, some mundane, some intimate, all private. You had me followed, she whispered, stunned. This is insane. Ahmad didn't flinch. I protected you from yourself, from your past, from shame. Layla's voice cracked. You married me to punish me? No, he said flatly. I married you to own the truth, to bring it into the light. But Layla wasn't the same girl he had stalked from the shadows. She was prepared, quietly, calmly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small voice recorder. Click. Say that again, she said. Tell me how you followed me, how you dug into my past, how you used private investigators and anonymous accounts to harass me for 2 years, how you invaded my life. Ahmed's face shifted from satisfaction to fury. You think this changes anything? He snapped, knocking the recorder from her hand. No one will believe you. I'm the husband, the protector. You'll be the disgraced woman who lied her way into this family. But Layla stepped back, confident. That's where you're wrong. I've been recording everything, every message, every encounter, every time you slipped up and revealed too much. I have a digital trail and backups. He stared at her, disbelief and panic settling in. She saw his mask finally fall. The calculated man who always controlled the narrative was unraveling. You're bluffing. She opened her phone, tapped a file, and played a voice message. His voice, full of rage, from weeks earlier. You can't outrun your past. I'll make sure no one forgets who you are. Silence swallowed the suite. Ahmad lunged. It was fast, primal. No words. No warnings. The rage that had been simmering beneath his charming surface exploded. Layla stumbled back, hitting the dresser. He grabbed her wrist, twisting. She screamed, fought, kicked. In the chaos, her elbow struck a glass vase, shattering it. Shards flew. Blood bloomed. And then silence. Ahmad collapsed, breathing shallow. A jagged piece of the vase was lodged in his side. Layla, trembling, backed away, her hand bleeding but eyes locked on the man she once thought was her savior. The suite filled with red and blue lights hours later. Hotel staff had called security when guests reported hearing screams. The scene was horrifying. Ahmad unconscious, Layla covered in blood, the room a war zone. Paramedics arrived first. Then police. Layla, shaken but composed, handed over her phone and all her evidence. Her statement was clear: self-defense. Premeditated emotional abuse. A record of threats, stalking, psychological torment. The case would ignite a firestorm across social media, news outlets, and Dubai's inner elite. But the truth was no longer a secret. It was a weapon Layla had wielded in the only way she could. As Layla stood frozen in the chaos of that presidential suite, the past and present collided like shards of glass. Ahmad, once the suave millionaire Prince Charming, now stood unmasked as a man consumed by obsession and rage. The walls of the suite were no longer silent witnesses to love, but echo chambers of trauma, betrayal, and a haunting silence that would last far beyond that night. Ahmed's hands trembled as he stared at the laptop screen Layla had thrown open. Footage played, dozens of hours of his private investigators tailing her, intercepted emails, audio recordings, and even hacked therapy sessions from her time in London. And yet, more damning were her counter-recordings. Layla had filmed phone calls, documented conversations, and recorded voice memos in which she described the constant dread of knowing she was being watched. "You thought I didn't know?" she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes but never falling. "You thought I'd let you ruin me without a fight?" Ahmad was speechless. The narrative he had convinced himself of, that Layla was hiding a shameful secret and deserved to be punished, was crumbling. This wasn't the revenge he had imagined. It wasn't a terrified bride begging for forgiveness. It was a woman, broken but powerful, ready to burn it all down. But obsession is a dangerous thing. And as Ahmed's world spun out of control, his instincts shifted from confrontation to destruction. He lunged at her. In the struggle that followed, a lamp shattered. Layla screamed, but the thick walls of the luxury suite muffled everything. She fought back, biting, scratching, kicking. Ahmed's rage turned primal, no longer about truth, justice, or family honor, but power. By the time security was alerted by other guests complaining about noise, the suite was a scene from a nightmare. Ahmad lay on the floor, gasping. A piece of broken glass protruded from his chest. Layla, in shock, her wedding dress torn and bloodied, stood against the wall as two hotel guards burst in. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just pointed to the laptop still playing behind her. Dubai's elite closed ranks quickly. What was supposed to be a royal-level wedding became a media firestorm. Layla was detained, but the evidence she had spent months collecting told a chilling story of surveillance, harassment, manipulation, and emotional abuse. It wasn't murder. It was self-defense. Her legal team, backed by several human rights lawyers, presented a compelling case. The psychological torture Layla had endured was documented not only through recordings but through psychiatrist reports, friends' testimonies, and digital footprints Ahmad could never erase. The trial was swift but controversial. In the end, Layla was acquitted of murder but sentenced to 2 years of probation for failing to report Ahmed's behavior earlier. The court recognized her actions as a desperate act of survival, but also criticized her silence during the months she was compiling evidence. Ahmed's family tried to suppress the story, but it was too late. Leaked footage, screenshots of the messages, and audio recordings made their way into the hands of international journalists. The world watched in stunned silence as the tale of a wedding night murder turned into a cautionary tale of surveillance, culture, and patriarchal control. But this wasn't just Layla's story. Over the following months, several women from elite Dubai circles came forward. They too had received anonymous threats, were followed by men who claimed to be suitors, and had their past scrutinized in ways that bordered on criminal. Layla's case had opened a gate no one could close. An underground movement emerged, young women sharing their stories, digital evidence, and calling for stricter laws against stalking and psychological abuse. Influencers who once flaunted their luxury lives began speaking out about safety, freedom, and emotional well-being. And Layla? She disappeared from the public eye. Her name became both a symbol of pain and resilience. Some said she left the UAE. Others claimed she started a new life under a different identity, working in human rights law. But once, in a small podcast hosted by a London-based women's rights activist, an anonymous caller told a story about love, control, power, and survival. Her voice cracked just once, and then she said, "Never let someone else tell your story. If you don't fight for your truth, they'll bury you in theirs." The presidential suite in that Dubai hotel was quietly renovated. No press was allowed during the changes. But no amount of paint or polish could erase the story etched into those walls. Layla's wedding photos, once meant for magazines and tabloids, never saw the light of day. Ahmed's family ceased public appearances for months, and the Middle East's ultra-private elite were forced to look in the mirror. This wasn't just a murder. This was a warning that behind luxury there can be fear, that even the most perfect night can turn deadly when obsession replaces love. If you made it this far, you're not just watching a story, you're witnessing a hidden truth. If this story gave you chills, imagine how many are still untold. Bell subscribe for more true stories that others are too afraid to tell. Thumbs up like if you believe silence can be deadly. Memo comment below, was Layla a victim, a survivor, or something more? Because sometimes the most dangerous secrets wear a wedding veil.